The Buzz with Jess Lujan.
We're back with my in-studio guest, former Senator Bob Klitzkie. Bob, so right to go on a break, I'm confused now. So another piece of document, the correct one now, comes in, right?
Well, according to Kristen's little note, the owner of the property, which would be the Archbishop as corporation sole, has agreed that he'll bring in his duplicate certificate of title, right, which is the one with all the wrong memorials on that Jackie Terlahi's had for 3 months. He most graciously consents to do that so that a new certificate can be issued. Then we don't have to go to court. So that just sits there for a while, right? And nothing happens. The next thing that happens is Michael Bora calls out the Attorney General publicly. And he said, you know, in effect, he said, you told me in January, petition the court. Kristen Finney, your assistant, says, don't have to, can do it in office. Which is it? A couple days later, the Attorney General, Elizabeth Barrett Anderson, you know, doesn't put down a page and a half of, you know, legal analysis, parsing the statute, this applies, this doesn't apply, this is what I said, I had my fingers crossed when I said it.
Behind my back.
So now I'm pulling it back. Nothing. She just says, I'm concurring in what Kristen and the Director of Land Management did. In other words, no going to court. And she also said, the Attorney General said that after my confrontations, shortly thereafter, the lawyer for the property owner approached them, approached their office. Now they're always using euphemisms. It's the Director of Land Management asked the Office of Attorney General to do this, that, and the other thing. I wrote back and I said, these are not anthropomorphic entities. Directors ask, lawyers respond. You know, this thing about a department asking. But that's, we just got more of that, approached our office. So we don't know if the lawyer for the property approached the chief cook and bottle washer or the Attorney General's
the office
herself. It was the office, right?
And it's confusing to me too, Bob, because over the course of this RMS and properties, and I mean, I know the Archbishop had sought the advice, I guess, or the opinion of I think once earlier of a off-island, I think it was a Colorado firm, to get their opinion as well. So when they say the lawyer for the owner of the property, as in the Archdiocese, who is representing the Archdiocese?
Well, that was another puzzle, because there isn't a single piece of paper in this whole thing except signatures in logbooks, etc., of Jackie Terlahi. The only reason that I know, or at least I think I know, that lawyer was Jackie Terlahi, because of the game of musical chairs we played with Kristen. I've got to sit down with Jackie Terlahi. Because I did a sunshine request on Michael Bora for every paper that had a lawyer's name on it. He just took me to the logbook for signing out for certificate. And I asked him, I said, that's it? And you never saw a piece of paper with Jackie Terlahi's name on it? No, I never did.
Never did.
So there was an apparent attempt to suppress that name right along with the department and the office and et cetera, et cetera. You can avoid a lot of accountability if you never mention anybody's name, right?
So the system that, although antiquated, you say the certificate of titles, the antiquatedness of that basically, and reliance on that, the system that we put in place to correct it or to solidify ownership and all that, again, has been, as you're putting it, and what we're saying in the course of this, has been greatly compromised.
Completely. When a classified employee named Andrew Santos has the ability to create the havoc with these land titles that he has created, then the system is completely invalid, because anybody who feels like it. Now, I don't know if this was misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance, etc. I don't know if he did this. You know, in the beginning I thought, boy, this guy really doesn't know what he's doing. But then later I thought, boy, maybe this guy really knows what he's doing. It's hard to say. But it would seem to me that someone ought to, someone other than me, and I'm still working on it, ought to get to the bottom of exactly what Andrew Santos didn't do, and why he did it.
And it sounded to me, because I remember reading as well, when the stories started to heat up and both sides were going back and forth, I know the oversight chair came out and said, I think it's about time to do an oversight and maybe take the corrective measures, because it sounded like corrective measures need to be in place, whether antiquated, whatever. I don't know if that oversight has happened at this point, and if it needs to be done legislatively. But although the antiquateness of what you have pointed out, maybe that needs to be removed, but it seems that there's a procedure to solidify, correct the wrong, and solidify, again, the righteousness of this whole thing.
Yeah. There are two strong points in the land registration law. One is that the initial certificate of title can't come out until there has been a land registration proceeding in court. So there's a court order that says X owns Blackacre, right? And then all the certificates of title are supposed to flow from there. And then the second strong point is that if there's an error, it must be corrected by the court. Well, we've brushed the second one aside now. So the only certificate of title that could be trustworthy would be the first one that issued after the land registration proceeding were completed. Everything after that.
Yeah. Well, but in this, when we go back to, again, the beginning of this whole thing, going back to even the donors and the Archbishop going back to trying to say, hey, can you redo this? Here's my form letter, sign off on this. Can we, I guess, if you put all this together, you know, when you start attaching the dots, it's almost, and I'm just saying, it almost, you can almost draw the conclusion that there's been a concerted effort again to again, for lack of a better word, falsify the situation. I mean, it looks like, or try to cover up a falsification of some legal documents.
Well, conceal certainly is appropriate.
Concealed, okay.
Because the Declaration of Deed Restriction and the Decree of Designation were concealed, even though they were recorded at the Department of Land Management. The existence of the Declaration of Deed Restriction was concealed in that Umatuna of November 29, which published a picture of a certificate of title where it was missing. The fact that it is missing, you could chalk that up to an error or a deliberate attempt to conceal what was really going on. That would go to at least Andrew Santos and anyone who was working with Andrew Santos, and it just keeps on going right on down the line.
Well, Bob, you know, I think because of the goings-on and the back and forth and corrective measures were not, different documentations, and it sounds that, again, the remedies, as easy as they can be had, that a remedy is not going to come up anytime soon other than, again, going before a judge.
I agree. I'm working on a couple of papers that I haven't turned loose yet, one of which is a petition pursuant to the Organic Act. The Organic Act allows a citizen to petition a government official for redress of grievance. And I'm working on one, and one of the things that I'm requesting is that every single certificate of title upon which the name Andrew Santos appears in any capacity must be audited. And if it's incorrect, then appropriate measures be taken, and the person who has relied on that certificate of title should be put back in a position that he had a right to rely on being in when he started that procedure. Second thing is maybe we just do away with the whole thing. Third thing is keep Andrew Santos out of the land record section. There are just so many things that can be done. Right on up to the Director of Land Management, Michael Bora, did not cover himself with glory here. The Attorney General of Guam seemed to not want to get involved, seemed to abdicate to her assistant when she concurred with Kristen Finney's resolution of the conflict, even though Kristen Finney's advice was the opposite of Elizabeth Barrett Anderson's advice. So there's an awful lot of work that needs to be done to bring back credibility to that whole land registration process, which at the beginning of last week's program, I opined is really the basis of our commerce here.
And as much as we spoke last week and even this week, trying to get clarification and even more understanding, the more this doesn't pass the smell test.
Exactly, exactly.
Bob, I got to take a break.
Sure.
Be right back.